Three women, one night, gone without a trace. Picture this: a mother, freshly divorced, finally building a new life for herself and her 19-year-old daughter. Two teenage girls, best friends since childhood, celebrating their high school graduation with dreams of college and endless summers ahead. June 6, 1992, should have been just another night of young freedom in Springfield, Missouri. But by sunrise, Cheryl Levitt, Susie Streeter, and Stacy McCall had vanished into thin air. No screams heard by neighbors, no signs of struggle, no ransom demands, just nothing. What happened in those dark hours between celebration and catastrophe would become one of America's most haunting, unsolved mysteries. And 32 years later, we're still asking the same terrifying question. How do three people simply disappear from a locked house, leaving behind everything they owned, including a small dog that would have barked at any stranger? The answer might be more disturbing than anyone imagined. 19-year-old Stacy McCall had everything to look forward to. She'd just graduated from Kickapoo High School alongside her best friend Susie Streeter. The two girls were inseparable, the kind of friendship that survives teenage drama and grows stronger with time. That Saturday evening they attended multiple graduation parties across Springfield, celebrating the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Originally, they planned to spend the night at another friend's house for a post-graduation sleepover. But plans changed, as they often do when you're 19 and the world feels infinite. Instead, around 2 a.m. on June 7, 1992, the girls decided to head to Susie's house at 1717 East Delmar Street. They wanted to get ready there before driving to Branson, Missouri later that morning for a trip to Whitewater, a popular water park. It seemed like the perfect end to their graduation weekend. Susie lived with her mother, 47-year-old Cheryl Levitt, in a modest single-story home in a quiet residential neighborhood. Cheryl, who went by Cheryl, had recently gone through a divorce and was working hard to rebuild her life. She operated Cheryl's hair salon from her home, transforming part of her house into a business that allowed her to support herself and Susie, while maintaining the flexibility of working from home. The house at 1717 East Delmar wasn't just a home, it was Cheryl's sanctuary. She'd poured her heart into making it comfortable for herself and her daughter. The small Yorkshire Terrier named Cinnamon completed their little family unit. But what happened in those early morning hours would shatter not just this family, but an entire community's sense of safety. When the girls arrived at the house around 2:15 a.m., everything appeared normal. The porch light was on, welcoming them home. Cheryl's car was parked in the driveway alongside Susie's vehicle. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, exactly as you'd expect at that hour on a Sunday morning. The girls entered the house, probably chatting about their evening, making plans for the next day. Maybe they talked about their futures, their dreams, the way teenagers do when they feel invincible. Maybe they grabbed snacks from the kitchen or flipped through magazines while discussing what to pack for their trip to Branson. What we know for certain is that all three women prepared for bed. Susie's clothes from the party were found neatly folded, suggesting she'd changed into sleepwear. Cheryl's bed showed signs of being slept in. Everything pointed to a normal end to what should have been a celebratory evening. But somewhere between those peaceful moments and dawn, something went terribly wrong. Around 9 a.m. the following morning, Janelle Kirby, one of Susie and Stacy's friends, arrived at the house. She was expecting to meet up with the girls for their planned trip to Branson. What she found instead would launch one of the most perplexing missing persons cases in American history. The front door was unlocked. This detail would later become crucial to understanding what happened, because Cheryl was known to be security conscious, especially as a single woman living with her teenage daughter. Janelle entered the house and immediately sensed something was wrong. The silence was unnatural. No voices, no movement, no signs of life except for one small, agitated Yorkshire Terrier named Cinnamon, who seemed distressed and confused. As Janelle moved through the house, the evidence of the women's presence was everywhere, yet the women themselves were nowhere to be found. All three purses sat on the floor of the living room, contents intact. Money, credit cards, identification, all left behind. The women's cars remained parked outside, keys still in the house. But perhaps most chilling was what Janelle noticed on the front porch. The glass lampshade covering the porch light was shattered, though the light bulb itself remained intact. Broken glass lay scattered across the porch, glinting in the morning sun like a warning that had come too late. In what would later be recognized as a critical mistake, Janelle's boyfriend, who had accompanied her to the house, helped sweep up the broken glass. They were trying to be helpful, to clean up what appeared to be an accident. Neither of them realized they might be destroying crucial evidence that could have solved this case decades ago. But the disturbing discoveries were just beginning. While inside the house, Janelle answered the phone. The voice on the other end was male, unfamiliar, and deeply unsettling. The man made sexual innuendos and spoke in a way that made Janelle's skin crawl. She hung up immediately, her heart racing. The phone rang again almost immediately, the same voice, the same disturbing tone, making similar inappropriate comments. Janelle slammed the phone down again, now genuinely frightened. Who was this person? How did he know to call this house? And where were Cheryl, Susie, and Stacy? Several hours later, after Janelle had left and attempted to contact the missing women through other friends, Janice McCall, Stacy's mother, arrived at the house. She'd been trying to reach her daughter all morning with no success, and maternal instinct told her something was wrong. Janice used her spare key to enter the house, and what she found confirmed her worst fears. The three women were simply gone, but their personal belongings told a story of interrupted lives. She noticed her daughter's clothing from the previous night neatly folded, indicating Stacy had changed for bed. The purses on the floor, the cars in the driveway, everything suggested the women had settled in for the night, and then vanished. Janice picked up the phone to call the police, her hands shaking as she dialed 911 to report her daughter and the two other women missing. After making the report, she noticed the answering machine was blinking, indicating a message had been left. She pressed play, hoping to hear her daughter's voice explaining where they'd gone. Instead, she heard what she later described as a strange message. The content was so unusual, so disturbing, that it stuck with her immediately. But in her emotional state, while trying to replay the message for clarity, she accidentally erased it from the tape. That message, whatever it contained, vanished into the digital void, taking with it what might have been the key to understanding what happened to the three women. When police arrived at 1717 East Delmar Street, they found a scene that was both ordinary and extraordinary. Ordinary because there were no obvious signs of violence, no blood, no overturned furniture, no indication of a struggle. Extraordinary because three adult women had simply evaporated, leaving behind their most precious possessions and no clues about where they'd gone or why. The investigation began immediately, but it was already compromised. By the time officers secured the scene, an estimated 10 to 20 people had walked through the house. Friends, family members, concerned neighbors, all with good intentions, had unknowingly contaminated what should have been a pristine crime scene. The broken glass from the porch light had been swept away. Fingerprints had been smudged or overlaid with new ones. Footprints had been obscured. The house had been transformed from a potential treasure trove of evidence into an investigative nightmare. But what evidence remained painted a puzzling picture. Cheryl's bed showed signs of being slept in, suggesting she had gone to bed normally and been awakened or taken while sleeping. The women's purses contained money and credit cards, ruling out robbery as a motive. Their cars, parked outside with keys left behind, eliminated the possibility that they'd left voluntarily for a spontaneous trip. Most tellingly, Cinnamon, the small Yorkshire Terrier, remained in the house. This detail troubled investigators because the dog would have barked at strangers, potentially alerting neighbors to any intrusion. Yet no one in the quiet residential neighborhood reported hearing any unusual sounds that night. If you're finding this case as compelling and mysterious as I am, and you want to see how this investigation unfolds and learn about the shocking eyewitness account that police may have ignored, make sure you're subscribed, because what comes next will change everything you think you know about this case. The Springfield Police Department launched an intensive investigation, but they were working against time and contamination. They interviewed friends, family members, and acquaintances of all three women. They searched the house thoroughly, dusted for fingerprints, and analyzed phone records. The phone calls that Janelle had received became a significant focus of the investigation. The sexual nature of the calls, combined with their timing, suggested the caller might have knowledge about the women's disappearance. But without caller ID technology widely available in 1992, tracing the calls proved nearly impossible. Investigators also focused on the shattered porch light. The glass was broken from the outside, suggesting either an accident or intentional damage. Some theorized that someone might have thrown something at the light, possibly to create darkness and cover their approach to the house. Others suggested it might have been broken during a struggle or attempted escape. The case quickly gained national attention. The disappearance of three women from a locked house, leaving behind all their possessions, was the kind of mystery that captured public imagination and media interest. Television shows, newspapers, and magazines covered the story extensively. Tips poured in from across the country. People claimed to have seen the women in various locations. Psychics offered their services. Amateur detectives proposed theories ranging from plausible to bizarre. But despite the massive public interest and police effort, no substantial leads emerged. Months turned into years, and the case grew cold. The Springfield Police Department continued to investigate, following up on tips and re-examining evidence. But the trail had grown frustratingly thin. Then, in 1997, 5 years after the disappearance, a convicted criminal named Robert Craig Cox made a startling claim. Cox, who was serving time for kidnapping and robbery, told investigators that he knew the women had been murdered and that their bodies would never be recovered. Cox's claim sent shockwaves through the investigation. Here was someone with a criminal history involving kidnapping, claiming specific knowledge about the fate of three missing women. Investigators interviewed him extensively, but Cox refused to provide details about how he knew this information or where the bodies might be located. Was Cox telling the truth? Did he have genuine knowledge about the crime, or was he seeking attention or attempting to manipulate the legal system for some personal advantage? The timing of his statement, coming 5 years after the disappearance, raised questions about his motives. Cox's criminal background made him a person of interest. But without additional evidence linking him to the Springfield 3 case, investigators couldn't build a prosecutable case. His statement became another frustrating piece of a puzzle that seemed to have no solution. But what if there was evidence that could have cracked this case wide open? What if there was an eyewitness who saw exactly what happened to these three women? What if that witness tried to tell police what he saw, but somehow his account was overlooked or dismissed? This is where our story takes a dramatic turn, because there was such a witness, and his account is so detailed, so specific, and so disturbing that it might explain exactly what happened to Cheryl Levitt, Susie Streeter, and Stacy McCall on that fateful night in June 1992. The witness was Gary Wayne Simpson, a federal bank examiner whose job required attention to detail and accuracy. On the night of June 6th into the early morning of June 7th, 1992, Simpson couldn't sleep. Insomnia had driven him from his bed, and rather than toss and turn, he decided to take a drive. Around 3:15 to 3:30 a.m., Simpson stopped at a Get-and-Go convenience store to buy cigarettes. He was a smoker who didn't smoke in his car because his wife was a non-smoker, so he planned to stand outside and have a cigarette before driving home. What he witnessed during those few minutes outside that convenience store would haunt him for the next 32 years. As Simpson stood outside the store, lighting his cigarette, he observed three Caucasian men near a mint green Dodge panel van from the late 1960s. The vehicle was distinctive, with no rear side windows and a poor paint job that made it appear brownish due to rust patina. The men appeared to be in their 20s and early 30s. Two of the younger men had light brown or dirty blonde shoulder-length hair, while the oldest had dark brown, long, stringy hair in what Simpson described as a Jesus-like style. All three wore T-shirts and jeans. Typical casual attire for young men of that era. But it was what Simpson saw next that turned his casual smoke break into a nightmare. The oldest man, who appeared to be about 6'2" and 200 pounds with a slender but muscular build, got out of the van and walked past Simpson into the convenience store. Simpson watched as the man purchased cigarettes, then walked past him again, got back into the van, and prepared to drive away. But before the van left, one of the younger men opened the side door of the vehicle, and Simpson saw something that made his blood run cold. Inside the back of the van were 3 women. Simpson recognized one of them immediately. It was Cheryl Levitt, whom he knew casually from her beauty shop. She was wearing jeans and a flowery top, her usual style, but the 2 younger women with her were dressed only in panties and t-shirts, barefoot and obviously distressed. One of the young women, who had long brownish hair, was picking at her foot. Simpson could see that her foot was bleeding slightly from the bottom, as if she'd stepped on something sharp or been forced to walk over rough terrain without shoes. The image burned itself into Simpson's memory: 3 women, 1 middle-aged and 2 barely adults, confined in the back of a van driven by 3 men in the early hours of Sunday morning. Simpson watched as the van drove away, carrying its human cargo into the darkness. He finished his cigarette, got back into his car, and drove home. But he couldn't shake what he'd witnessed. The scene played over and over in his mind, each detail crystal clear. On June 11, 1992, 4 days after the women were reported missing, and after the story had broken in local news, Simpson realized the horrific significance of what he'd seen. He immediately contacted the Springfield Police Department to report his eyewitness account. Simpson provided police with detailed descriptions of the 3 men, the van, and most importantly, the 3 women he'd seen inside the vehicle. He told them about the van's distinctive appearance: the poor paint job with rust patina, the lack of rear side windows. He described the men's ages, builds, and hairstyles. He explained how he'd recognized Cheryl Levitt and described the condition of the 2 younger women. This should have been the break investigators had been hoping for. An eyewitness account from a credible source, a federal bank examiner whose job required precision and attention to detail. Someone who could potentially identify at least one of the perpetrators, providing police with their first solid lead in a baffling case. But here's where the story takes an inexplicable turn. Police apparently did not follow up on Simpson's report in any meaningful way. There's no record of Simpson being brought in to look at mugshots, despite his statement that he could identify the older man from the van. There's no indication that police launched a search for a mint green Dodge panel van matching his description. The detailed witness account that could have transformed the entire investigation seems to have been filed away and forgotten. Why would police ignore such crucial eyewitness testimony? Simpson's credentials as a federal bank examiner made him a highly credible witness. His detailed description provided specific leads that could have been pursued. Yet somehow, this potentially case-breaking information was overlooked or dismissed. Simpson has carried the weight of this knowledge for 32 years. He's been haunted by the image of those 3 women in the back of that van, knowing he may have been the last person to see them alive, knowing he provided police with information that could have led to their rescue, or at least brought their killers to justice. The implications of Simpson's account are staggering. If accurate, it means the Springfield 3 were abducted from their home by 3 men, transported in a panel van, and taken to an unknown location where they were presumably murdered, as Robert Craig Cox claimed to know in 1997. But the most troubling aspect of this entire scenario isn't just that 3 innocent women were kidnapped and killed. It's that a credible eyewitness provided police with detailed information that could have solved the case, and that information was apparently ignored. This raises disturbing questions about the investigation itself. Was Simpson's account properly documented? Was it shared with all relevant investigators? Were there procedural failures or communication breakdowns that prevented this crucial lead from being pursued? Think about it. With Simpson's eyewitness testimony, police could have identified and arrested at least one of the perpetrators within days of the crime. That person could have been charged with kidnapping and potentially pressured to reveal information about his accomplices and the location of the victims' bodies. Instead, 32 years have passed. The case remains unsolved. The families of Cheryl Levitt, Susie Streeter, and Stacy McCall have lived 3 decades without answers, without closure, without justice. The failure to follow up on Simpson's account represents one of the most significant investigative oversights in modern criminal history. A case that could have been solved in 1992 remains open today, not because of a lack of evidence, but because crucial evidence was apparently ignored. But Simpson's account also provides us with the most plausible explanation for what happened that night. The 3 women were likely asleep when the perpetrators entered the house. The shattered porch light may have been broken to provide cover for their approach. The lack of signs of struggle suggests the women may have been threatened with weapons or overpowered quickly. The fact that Cinnamon, the Yorkshire Terrier, remained in the house supports this theory. The dog wouldn't have barked at intruders who entered quietly and subdued the women before they could react. The perpetrators likely forced the women outside in whatever they were wearing, which explains why 2 of them were seen in only panties and t-shirts. The bleeding on one woman's foot suggests they were forced to walk over rough terrain or broken glass, possibly the shattered porch light, as they were taken to the van. This scenario explains all the evidence found at the scene: the unlocked door, the lack of struggle, the shattered porch light, the presence of the dog, and the women's belongings left behind. It also explains Robert Craig Cox's 1997 claim that the women were dead and their bodies would never be found. Cox may have had connections to the perpetrators or knowledge about where the bodies were disposed of. The sexual nature of the phone calls that Janelle Kirby received that morning may have been from one of the perpetrators, either taunting or attempting to determine whether the women had been discovered missing yet. If you're as outraged as I am about this potential investigative failure, and you want justice for Cheryl, Susie, and Stacy, please share this story. The more people who know about Gary Wayne Simpson's eyewitness account, the more pressure there might be to reopen this investigation properly. These women deserve justice, and their families deserve answers. Today, Gary Wayne Simpson is elderly, but he remains willing to testify about what he saw that night. His memory of the events remains clear, his description detailed, his identification of the perpetrators potentially still valid. The question is whether law enforcement will finally take his account seriously. The Springfield 3 case represents more than just an unsolved mystery. It represents a failure of the justice system to protect and serve. 3 innocent women lost their lives, their families have suffered for decades without closure, and a community has lived with the fear that killers walked free among them. But it also represents hope. Simpson's account provides a clear path forward for investigators willing to pursue it. DNA technology has advanced significantly since 1992. Facial recognition software could help identify the perpetrators from Simpson's descriptions. Computer databases could search for mint green Dodge panel vans registered in Missouri in 1992. The tools exist to solve this case. What's needed is the will to use them. Cheryl Levitt was 47 years old, a single mother trying to build a new life for herself and her daughter. She worked hard, cared for her clients at her home salon, and loved her family. She deserved to see her daughter graduate from college, get married, have children. Susie Streeter was 19, full of dreams and possibilities. She'd just graduated high school and was looking forward to college, to independence, to all the experiences that define young adulthood. She deserved to live those dreams. Stacy McCall was also 19, Susie's best friend since childhood. She had plans, goals, a future stretching out before her like an open road. She deserved to travel that road, to discover who she would become. Instead, all 3 were stolen away in the darkness by men who saw them not as human beings, but as objects to be used and discarded. Their families have spent 32 years wondering what happened, hoping against hope that somehow, someday, they might come home. They won't come home. We know that now. But they can still receive justice. Their killers can still be brought to account. Their families can still receive the closure they've been denied for over 3 decades. All it takes is for law enforcement to do what should have been done in 1992. Take Gary Wayne Simpson seriously, pursue his eyewitness account with the diligence it deserves, and use every available tool to identify and arrest the men who destroyed 3 innocent lives. The Springfield 3 case doesn't have to remain unsolved forever. The answers are there, waiting in a federal bank examiner's 32-year-old testimony and in the advanced investigative techniques available today. What it needs is someone with the courage to act on that information. The women of Springfield, Missouri, and mothers everywhere deserve nothing less than justice. Cheryl Levitt, Susie Streeter, and Stacy McCall are counting on it. Even in death, they're still waiting for someone to bring them home.